this is Grant, and this is Coffee with Grant. We are missing Ruby because she's in trouble. Apparently, she is mad at me because I told her she can't eat her own turds. Yeah, you're still in trouble. Don't give me that side eye. Anyway, good morning. No, when I tell you to drop something, you drop it. You don't run around like it's a toy. Oh, anyway, this morning, I was looking for a topic to talk about, and I decided I'm going to rant about parking. I know, super exciting. Right, Ribs? All right, fine. I can't be mad at you. Come here. Yes. Oh, don't give me kisses. I know where your mouth's been. Parking. Nothing infuriates me more. That's not true. I mean, that's hyperbole. But paid parking is infuriating. Because the idea is like we live in a society that is constantly trying to nickel and dime us. There is a continual cost of living just to exist. And if you reach a certain level of income, you just kind of, I would imagine, I haven't hit it yet, but if you reach a certain level of income, you kind of just are like, oh, okay, well, that's insignificant. I don't care. But like the paid parking is one of those things where it is a absolute, and it makes tons of money. It kind of has people over a barrel because what are you going to do? It's like, oh, I need to go to an event downtown. Every single parking spot is paid. There's no free spot that you can have. So your alternative is to either, it's the lesser of two evils. Do you find a place that's in garage, that's convenient? Do you find a place on the street that might be a little cheaper but further away? There's really no good side of things there. And on the other side, that's the bare minimum, and then it goes up. So I got into an argument about how I think that parking, especially in downtown Omaha, has gotten a little ridiculous. Because, like, for example, I head down for improv comedy regularly. And every time I park, I know I'm going to be there for 2 to 3 hours. Because it's either a show or a class that I'm going down for. And that ends up being $4 or $5 every time. So I worked it out, and I was spending about $100 a month just on parking. Right? And I want to frequent local businesses. I want to support the comedy club. I want to support the businesses downtown. But I've realized that there's definitely a cost barrier to entry. And I got into this argument where I said, hey, there should be a system that either makes things cheaper during off hours, because they already make it more expensive during the peak hours. I can tell you that if there is a event at the Orpheum, if there's a big show and they know like it's Saturday night and there's something going on, the $5 that I spend on parking easily becomes $9 or $10 for the exact same parking spot on the same street for the same amount of time. So that's just them going, oh, well, there's going to be more people and therefore we need to game the system. And some of the counter arguments that I was seeing, because I kind of got onto a rant about this online, one of the counter arguments was like, that's how they maintain all the parking spots. And I was like, no, that's not how that works. The parking money doesn't immediately go back to maintain the pavement that you park on, let alone that pavement that is parked on is needed to be replaced a heck of a lot less than pavement that's been driven over. And it's not cars and trucks, it's big commercial vehicles that tear our roads up more than regular everyday traffic. You talk about the potholes. And our pothole problem, we would have infinitely less potholes if we only had small, 2-person, 4-person vehicles driving on them. It is the large trucks, it's the municipal trucks, it's the heavy things that start to crack that pavement out and damage it. Yeah, I mean, and arguably, our roads would never need replaced if we all drove around golf carts, but can't do that. So, I mean, a lot of the road pavement, the paving budget comes out of the wheel taxes, the taxes on gasoline, the taxes for registering a car and having a license and all that stuff helps to offset the cost of repaving roads. And the luxury of that is you don't have to repave every road in your city every year. You have, like once every 30 years, maybe you might have it on a schedule, et cetera, and so forth. And so, by that logic, if it was just to pay for the pavement underneath it, you would have a square footage of that pavement, and you would charge for parking until you had paid for it, and then you would stop charging for it. Because you'd go, oh, I paid for the exact parking spot, and whenever it needs replaced, we will replace it for the money that we've saved, and then that'll be it. And whenever we replace it, we'll turn the parking meter back on again until we need to replace it again. And obviously, no, it's not a inevitable tax that people should pay. There are plenty of places that have free parking and they don't charge for parking, and they do just fine. So parking is this weird, like, niche luxury tax. It's a convenience fee is what it is. So most of the time, the logic for a proponent for paid parking, especially downtown and downtown areas, let's say, is there is a finite number of parking spots. And they don't want, and also it's mixed use buildings. So downtown is a great example of this, to say, okay, we have both businesses which have foot traffic. You've got your Zio's Pizza, you've got dental offices downtown, etc. You need people coming in for your business, hair salons, etc. Then you have commercial businesses that don't require foot traffic. Those would be like your accounting firms, your legal offices, or your insurance, etc. and so forth. So you've got a lot of people coming in to work, but you don't have a whole lot of like Black Friday sale foot traffic, right? And then you have people who live downtown who are in the apartment building, and they're there all the time. Now, there's some overlap here. You might have an apartment downtown and you go work at the sub shop down the road, etc. and so forth. And if you have a car, you are not going to be able, you're probably, you might go from your apartment to work, and not move your car for a couple of days. If you don't have paid parking, that car could just sit there, and then the prime parking spots that could be used for customers are going to be taken, and then parking will be a problem. So the first and probably the only logical reason for paid parking is to have a turnover in parking spaces, to say, oh, okay, we want it to be cheap enough where if you paid for an hour or 2 hours, you'd go, okay, that's fine. But expensive enough where if you left it there for 24 hours, you'd go, oh, okay, that's a lot. And then also by putting a parking meter on there, if you don't pay, and you continue, it used to be illegal to feed the meter. You couldn't feed the meter twice. You'd have to move your car. If you did that, then your car could be towed. So you can't just leave cars in storage on public paid parking spaces overnight, and that increases turnover. And in theory, that makes it easier for people to frequent businesses. But there's a trade-off, right? There's a trade-off when you're doing things that, like, that's fine if you're like, oh, it's our anniversary and we're going downtown the one time we venture out of West Omaha. The one time we venture out of West Omaha, we're going to go east of 72nd Street. We're going to go downtown for a nice dinner, and we're going to, I guess we'll pay for parking. It's not a big deal. But that's different. That's part of your, like, night out cost. That's different than what I'm doing, which is like, oh, I have to go downtown for a regularly scheduled multi-hour thing. It's part of... And doing that, the system really disadvantages you. And my argument is that if we all just kind of respected parking spaces, we wouldn't have to have paid parking. We could kick it to the curb. Well, there's plenty of idioms we could use. Yeah, we could kick it to the curb there. But then we have things like just paid parking lots. So it's somebody who's bought a piece of property, turned it into a parking lot, and decided that they're going to charge as much as they want. There's no minimum that they have to charge, or there's no maximum, I should say, that they have to charge to put that stuff in, and then just start printing money. I would imagine that as far as the overall maintenance cost goes, even the argument being maintenance, as far as the overall maintenance cost goes, you can get by for a long, long time without doing maintenance on a parking lot. And if people are willing to pay whatever rate you're charging, even if not everybody pays, that's the thing. If you have a lot and it is worth X amount of dollars because it has a parking lot on it, it doesn't have a structure, it doesn't have square footage, it's probably you would easily make enough to pay off the taxes on that property, and then once you hit the reimbursement of your tax rate, literally anybody who pays is profit. So whether people pay or not, whether you actually have 100% participation on your paid lot, you are still making money. And that is one of those weird disingenuous things where from a capitalist perspective that seems like a brilliant business model, but what you're doing is you are basically taking a resource, you're taking advantage of people to do that. I see that in that way. And other people would argue that no, oh, that's their private property, and if you want to park there, they're offering a service. And sure, I mean, the free market would tell you that yes, you can charge whatever you want for parking. Where I find it really, those sort of things, it's like where it's optional, that's fine. Where it's not optional, where like, for example, if you go stay at a hotel, a lot of hotels will do this now, where they'll say, oh, we don't have a parking lot where you can park your own car. Yes, you're spending $130 a night here at our hotel, but also it's $60 a night for your car to spend the night in the valet lot. So not only do you have to have the valet parker get your car, put it away, and get it back every single time, you are also expected to tip them because they're doing that service for you that you didn't ask for or want. And then you're paying that on top of the nightly fee that you're paying for the hotel. That kind of stuff I find just maddening. I've heard stories, thankfully, I haven't run into any hospitals in Omaha that do this yet, but I've heard stories of hospitals starting to do this where all of their visitor parking is paid parking. So you would be going, oh, I have to go to the hospital. I am in an emotional state. I have to go visit my loved ones who are in the hospital for some reason. And or I'm trying to do something nice. Like pretty much every time you go visit the hospital, it's never good news. Now, I don't think anyone's ever wanted to be there, aside from maybe delivering a baby, and even then, it's kind of a thing. But it's like every time I've gone to visit the hospital, it's been either has emotional support, I'm there for something I don't want to be there for, or I'm there visiting a friend or family member and I'm trying to do something nice. So the idea that you would go, oh, we're just going to capitalize on people trying to do the right thing, people trying to come into the hospital for whatever reason, for profit models like that tend to land on things like convenience charges, because we as a society have decided that it is more convenient to pay it than to fight it. And if we all collectively fought back against things like these, then we could probably get rid of paid parking or put it back. But the problem is, cities aren't going to get rid of that money. Once a city gets revenue from its budget, like for its budget, and they start looking at the line item and they go, oh, wow, well, we can do XYZ with this money, because I guarantee you that the parking money is it's millions of dollars. It just has to be. And I don't think it's all going to road maintenance. I think it's being used for other things within the city. I think, and I'd have to look at the line by line of the city budget. I think that would be really interesting. I'm one of those people that I think city budgets are very interesting. But I would argue that once you are, if you're the accountant, you're the treasurer, the comptroller, or whatever it is, and you are looking at the budget, you would go, okay, well, we have, I don't know, $10 million coming in every year with the parking fees. Why would we ever stop that? What would be the incentive, right? Because the incentive, in theory, would be to turn the parking fees down or off in order to incentivize more people to frequent that area, to then populate the businesses who would be doing better, who would pay more taxes. And so in theory, you would get more money the other way, but it would take more steps and you're relying on people paying their taxes. Nobody's ever going to, if they're making money in a certain way, voluntarily turn that off. So it becomes this slippery slope where unless you start with a process, like right now in Omaha, there's a neighborhood called Exarban. Yes, it is Nebraska spelled backwards, and we are just apparently unironically okay with that. We just all decided that we're just going to have a thing that's like, what if we just spelled it backwards? That'd be fun. And the Exarban neighborhood is very nice. It's got like a little park. It's got a walkable little business district with shops and a movie theater and a food court. And there's a couple of big office buildings and insurance companies that set up shop there. And there's a little hotel complex and some suites where you could like host a mini convention. Microsoft has an office over there. All sorts of fun stuff. You know, there's a convention center across the street that's owned by the university. Really, it's probably one of the best examples of positive urban development because it used to be a horse racing track. That's all it was. It was a giant, and I mean massive, parking lot and a horse racing track. And part of what they did when they renovated it was they built at least 3, off the top of my head, parking garages. And so far, all those parking garages are free. I think they have like the hardware in there to charge for parking, but they don't. So when you're looking for parking, if you're going there for the farmers market, if you're there for an event in the park, which is where the Maha Music Fest is, if you are just going to see a movie, you don't have to pay for parking. And it makes it easier to say, oh, I want to go to Exarban and I want to frequent those businesses. Now, for our downtown example, most of the businesses that have employees that come there every day, your First National Banks, your Kiewits, you know, the Omaha World Herald, they all have their own parking garages for employees. So it's not like employees of big companies are fighting for parking spaces. It is literally and most apartments have figured this out too. They're like, oh, well, if somebody's living downtown, we are in a driving city, we need to provide parking. We need to have some sort of parking solution. So they will work with parking garages to say, all right, we're going to have the first 2 floors of this parking garage will be, or the upper floors, whatever, are reserved for residents of this apartment building, and you get 1 or 2 spots depending on how much you want to pay the whole thing. So like all of that's taken care of already. Really, the only people it's taking advantage of are people coming downtown who don't live there, who want to frequent a business. So the idea that this is somehow like everybody should be paying for parking is a misnomer. We don't have to be paying for parking. We could be doing something completely different. It is just a way of, I see paid parking as this gateway into like Ayn Rand style objectivism, rampant capitalism. Where your entire value is based, as a person in society, your entire value is based on what you can contribute, and value is extracted at every opportunity all the time. And that is something that paid parking gets to, right? I think the comparative argument, and this is one of these weird counter arguments that I'm still trying to wrap my brain around, that somebody was doing them, but they're like, oh, well, you know, it's not your parking spot to claim for yourself, it's public. Like, yup. Like, but that's also how parking works, is like you get to your fucking spot and it's yours. Like, for the duration of how long you want to park there, that's your parking spot. So yes, that is kind of how it works. But the argument is that, oh yeah, you can't go to the public park and set up a tent and be like, this is my house now, I own the public park, I'm king of the park. We've all entered into it. Oh, I'm so sorry. Did I say I said the B word? She's like, what? We've all entered into this agreement that the park is something that we all get to share, and we contribute a little bit of our taxes to pay for the maintenance of it, and therefore no individual gets to own it. And that's kind of the idea with parking spots as well, that it is a place that you can use as a convenience when you are visiting someplace away from your house. And the alternative is this argument that I'm trying to combat, which is such a weird thing, is that everybody has to pay, and if you don't pay, it's the equivalency of claiming that spot for yourself. Like, you are somehow selfish. And that would be the argument with the park, is going, oh, everybody should have to pay to enter and use the park. And if you don't pay, the only alternative is that you have now claimed the park for yourself and you are now king of it. And obviously that doesn't hold up. Public spaces should be free. There should be a lower barrier for cost of entry and cost of living, right? Because not everybody is at the same socioeconomic place in the world, and we should have, societally, we should have places where you can go for free. Certain cities have become increasingly hostile and expensive for people with no money. Like what you can actually do with no money is getting shaved away further and further and further. And parking is just one of those things, right? So if I want to go downtown and hang out at the park, well, I can't technically do that for free because I have to park my car there. So I can, if I'm driving, right? If I want to ride my bicycle downtown and hang out, that is free. But then there's going to be, so that the alternative is, if you're putting your capitalist brain on, they go, oh, well, what if we made bike parking on the sidewalks illegal, and you then had to use this bicycle parking facility to park your bike for a fee? Oh, then we could take advantage of people who ride their bicycles down. And what, like, and to think that way is a slippery slope, because eventually what you're going to be doing is nickel and diming everybody for everything in the interest of, I don't know, capitalist excess. In the interest of charging people just because you can charge them. Like, and I don't think that's a good enough reason. And the last thing I was going to say is, like, if you think that like paid parking is a necessity, it's a inevitability. It's like it's a social tax that we should all be paying, and it helps do the road maintenance and the whole deal. I would challenge you to go to, like, one of the many small towns that we have. Like, so there's a lot of these small towns around Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas as well. And what they are is they are a small town that was all built in the same format. There is a courthouse in the middle of the town. And in the middle of the town, there's the courthouse. It is literally on a town square. There's often a gazebo. You can almost picture like a little marching band there. And then around the town square is normally 4 one-way streets that only let you go around one way. And then there's all the businesses that are for this town are around there on the town square. And that is, the local sewing shop that's owned by Cheryl, who, sells you yarn and knitting supplies, and it's the hardware store, and it's your veterinarian, and it's all those things. And they either have parking spots that are the diagonals going with this one-way street, or some of them have parking spots like right in the middle of the lane, which is kind of neat. Go to a small town like that and try to talk them into paying for parking spots downtown in their little square, and they will light you on fire. Because the idea is, if you already have a system that works and it's free, and you have a system where people are going to respect it, they're going to come into town and they're going to use the parking spots for what they're intended, which is, going to Lola's, the local cafe, and getting a cup of coffee and a Denver omelet, and then they're like, they don't need to pay an extra $1 for the privilege of coming to visit a business. And I get, the bigger the city you have and the more complex you have, it is an easily monetary metric to regulate stuff like that. But we could easily find another way to do it without or we could find an ethical way to do it without trying to min-max every last cent out of people. And this gets me to my last point, which is, I think there was a certain amount of social collaboration with the previous parking meter setup. And what I mean by that is that in times gone by, like when I was bartending, once upon a time when I was working at Jake's Cigar Bar in Lincoln, we had physical parking meters, the same parking meters that the U.S. had been using for, I think, like since the 40s or something, right? And everybody who has interacted with one knows exactly what I'm talking about. You'd put quarters in, you'd turn it, and the little dial would go up to the amount of time, and then it would slowly count down, and then when it got to the end, it would have a little flag that said time expired. But what that meant was you could overpay a parking meter and leave, and the next person who came in potentially could have they could have the remainder of your 20 minutes that's left on the parking meter. So you kind of felt like, oh, I overpaid for parking, but I may be doing the next guy a solid. Or you could say, oh, I've got some spare change, and then you just walk by and you'd plug a bunch of the meters and give people a little extra time. And meter maids hate that. Apparently it's illegal to plug the meters like that, to just be like, oh, wait, you're cheating us out of parking fines and tickets, I guess. The system that they have now is automated in that it's digital. And so you put in your license plate number, you put in the zone that you're parked in, which isn't down to the specific parking space, it's down to the zone, and then you pay in increments of hours. So you don't have the option anymore to pay by 15 minutes, or like an old parking meter, you'd pay by the minimum amount of coinage that it would accept. So if you had nickels, you could pay every couple of minutes and fill the whole thing up with nickels if you wanted to. And so now, if I'm going downtown, I need to find a parking spot. I want to pay because I don't want a ticket. I have to pay for a minimum of an hour, even if I'm just running in to get a pizza. And that means that when I leave, there's 45 minutes left on my meter, which the city just gets to have. They just get to have the bonus. And that also tells me that they're trying to game the system so that they make more money. So, I mean, reasonably, what I could do is every single time I park, it'd be a fun little social experiment. We'll see what happens. Every time I park downtown, I could document the time that I parked, which would be in my parking receipt. And then I could somehow document the time that I leave the parking spot. And I could then calculate the rate from the time I paid to the unused time that I paid for at the end, saying, hey, I didn't use this service that you charged me for. And then at the end of the year, just be like, here's an invoice for all of the parking that I overpaid for. Please give me a refund. And see what happens. Because I think legally that would be an interesting idea, is that, and what they would probably do is then go, okay, I guess you can choose to pay in increments of 15 minutes, and we're probably going to make $1 million less because, etc. and so forth. Or because it's credit card. This is what I don't get. It's like all the parking went up. All the parking across, compared to paying with cash, all of the cost of parking went up across the board by like 100%. It's like double what it used to be. And knowing what I know about payment systems, I would argue that that's probably because of the stupid credit card processing fees. So literally what we've done then is we've increased the inconvenience so that we can pay a credit card company the privilege of paying for our own parking spots, which also doesn't make any goddamn sense, except, that's what capitalism does. So arguably, I think parking generally should be free. I think there's a way to work that out. And I think there's also a way to scale things so that you can get around that where it's not wholly cost prohibitive and inconvenient. And I'm sure there's a ton of counter arguments. It'd be funny if this is like the one thing that people like fixate on, and they're like, you're fucking wrong. Like, no, I want to pay for parking, by God. Like, yeah, and I'll be honest with you, if I had a parking lot, that would be some passive income that I would hold on to forever. Like, I would be on the other side of this argument, I feel like, because I'd go, I own a private parking lot and it makes, $5,000. I mean, you'd probably make quite a bit of money. Like, if I'm doing a little math here before we run out of our time, let's say I'm charging, the maximum you could charge is like, say, $1 an hour, so $24. If you left your car in the lot overnight and you have 200 parking spots times $24 an hour is $4,800. Presumably this is the maximum you could possibly make for having all 200 parking spots full every single day. If you did that every single day for 365 years, you'd be making $1.7 million in parking. That's $1 an hour. So, but that's your top end. But let's say, even if you were pulling down a quarter of that, it would still be $500,000 in just for having a parking lot with 200 spaces in it and having a majority of the people pay for whatever it is. So I find it really hard to justify that that's like a necessary service. Clearly they're paying their taxes on that property is probably probably in the order of like $3,000 a year to pay the taxes on it. Maybe their business is going to be paying income tax, and that's going to be a chunk out of that, etc. Arguably that could be a benefit for the city, but it's like, it's just disgusting. And it is a stair step into other things where pretty soon we're going to, as there are attacks on public libraries and attacks on public places, and this misnomer about what socialism actually is and isn't, the cost of just existing is going to go up. And I think we as a society should always be trying to make the bare cost of existing go down. And on that note, on that note, it's time to end. Rubes, do you have anything to add? Should we go to the park today? Yeah, I think so. All right. Be kind to each other until tomorrow.